Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 7th of August, comes to you from London. And I want to start by talking about the Japanese yen. There's been lots of talk about the carry trade in the market. And of course, this rapid change in the yen from 161, we had the Bank of Japan raise rates, the Fed didn't raise rates, and the whole carry trade suddenly just wasn't working. Just think about it. You're basically buying your dollars with yen at 161, and this has been a one-way bet. Your dollar value is going up, and then suddenly this rapid adjustment means that suddenly what was an easy game of borrowing money for no interest and transferring it to dollars and getting 5%, or buying dollar-denominated assets, and then suddenly that sudden change where the yen strengthened. Remember, this is dollar weakness, yen strength. The yen strengthened, the dollar weakened, and suddenly the whole structure of that carry trade just didn't work. And that meant, and then we had non-farm payrolls on top of that, and that meant that basically you did the whole sell everything mentality came in to be able to liquidate assets and pay back the yen that you borrowed. So really interesting here that cross through the cloud. This was actually happening in July, that we had this cross through the cloud. And then this last couple of weeks, that's what's really driven a lot of this. But the reality is, we were talking about this 2 weeks ago in our talking heads. We were talking about the fact that lots of stocks in the US, if we look at Apple, for example, lots of stocks in the US had seen the lower high, lower low. And this was really happening. I mean, you could just go through and look at all the charts. And we were talking about this literally 2 weeks ago in our talking heads. Nvidia, classic exact action here, where you had the lower high, lower low. And it was really just really clear that you had this move or capitulation in price, and this double top really failing to make a new high, lower high, lower low. And so that was playing out in markets. So you had a perfect storm. And so the big question is now, where do we go from here? So let's take a look at the chart. So the dollar index, if we look at that first of all, we see again that lower high, lower low. Target was met. We're seeing a little bit of a recovery there on the short-term chart. This is the 60-minute and the daily. And of course, you can go and look at the weekly chart, which will be the very long-term picture. But here we see the 60-minute chart is recovering, but not yet through the clouds. So seen a recovery in the dollar, but not enough to really change the picture. Bitcoin has been another really interesting one where we've seen this really big move off. We have this downside target generated on Bitcoin, and we are really moving lower. And if we look here on the chart for Bitcoin, we see here how we're just moving lower and lower all the time. So that's really quite key there. Taking a look at the Nasdaq, we see here again, on the Nasdaq, we've got this move through the cloud on the price, just bouncing on the lagging line. So really quite interesting. We are just holding, but there's support levels here at 17,284, 16,973. These were the previous lows in May. So those are the levels that we're now watching. We do have this downside target suggesting we will go through there. So really the picture is not great in terms of that potential move to the end of the trend. And if we look at the 60-minute chart, we see here how the targets have all been given. So we had target given way back here on the 17th of July. That one was met. Another one given. That one was met all the way down, and no new upside targets yet. So it's really hard to be bullish on the Nasdaq. If you're trading the futures, you want to be looking at the 5 and 10-minute charts and those targets. The S&P Future is looking at that today. We are seeing a little bit of recovery in the future, and that is showing up on this target on the S&P 500. So on the future, we are seeing the potential, but we're hitting the cloud there. And remember, this target is counter trend, and we still do have this downside target. So you resolve the targets based on the trend, and that's a fact. Remember, these targets derive from point and figure charts. These targets were invented in the 1940s, so there's nothing new about them, just a new way at looking at them. If we look at Europe now, taking a look at the DAX, This has been really quite interesting as well. Head and shoulders really developing there on the DAX. Shoulder, head, shoulder on the daily chart. And again, looking at the targets, we fell away. These downside targets all met. We do have a new upside target, but it's counter trend. We do have this pattern here on the 60-minute chart of a higher low, higher high. That's bullish, but we are below the cloud. So for the moment, you really do need to be cautious. And of course, we are below the cloud on the daily chart very clearly there. So we can't ignore that. Now, Japan had a really big spike down based on that yen move, and we are below the cloud. Again, we've got support levels there. Downside target given, it was met much more quickly than projected. The fact is the target was given, and that's where we went. So really quite key there. We do have upside recovery targets, but again, they are counter trend. So we need to be aware of that. Looking at some of the other indices, we've got the Sensex. That's been hit as well. Not activated the downside target yet on the short-term chart, and faring much better than other markets, holding above the cloud. So that's one of the brighter spots. We'll look at the energy mix very briefly in a minute. Gold, this has been really, really interesting. If we look here, the upside targets, very bullish on gold. We're holding above the cloud. We've got quite strong resistance at 2480 level. And then if we look at the 60-minute chart for gold, upside target given and met, downside target, we've got another one that's not yet activated. That's orange. That will turn red if we move below. So that's what we're watching for at the moment, and we are below the cloud. And as I mentioned, that sell everything mentality has hit precious metals. Normally gold would be a beneficiary of uncertainty, and we've seen really big moves in silver. And again, downside targets moving back below the cloud, bearish on the 60-minute chart, so you really can't ignore that. US 10-year yields, of course, this has been pretty volatile as well. Big downside targets here. That one given. This one was given at 415, nearly met 362. We got down as 366, so that target was given. New upside target, and we are just crossing through the cloud, so that's really quite interesting as well. Tech looking pretty awful all round now. If we look at the charts, downside targets, downside targets, downside targets, and those targets, some of those targets have been in place for a while, so you really can't ignore that. And if you look at the Magnificent Seven right through the charts, they've all got these downside targets, lower high, lower low. So not great for tech. Now taking a look at the energy mix, if we start with Brent Crude, really interesting here, this lower high, lower low, below the cloud on the daily. With everything that's going on in the world, hard to believe that crude oil is in a bearish trend on the medium term. Do have a couple of upside targets here, not yet activated. We went out as neutral today in our morning report to clients. And if we look at WTI, similar picture, of course. Mixed targets, really, again, neutral, just waiting to see which way we break. But for the moment, we have below the cloud on the 60-minute and on the daily. Can't ignore that. US NatGas is back above $2, so that's looking a little bit better, but still pretty bearish and just coming above the cloud and having met that 204 target. But really, for the moment, that's a difficult call. Bullish for today was our call. If we look at the 1-minute chart, we see here we had these upside targets, and that was what generated that for the morning call. Taking a look at emissions, this is looking a little bit interesting. Just a little bit of a risk here on the 60-minute chart of lower high, lower low. So we're going to watch out for that. We do have upside targets, but we are in the cloud. Again, we were neutral today on carbon. And if we look at gas, we were actually bearish today on gas, just based on the targets for the short term. Notice how these upside targets have been met. Waiting for this new upside target to activate, that's going to be key. But the 1-minute chart was really what governed that there. And if we take a look at German power, this is a little bit less clear than gas. We see here, but we've got these good upside targets pulling back to the cloud. We need to find support and watch for new targets being generated. Keep an eye on those price targets and watch for markets making new low. That's it for today. Until next time, happy charting. Bye for now.